okay, and that's your final answer?
Thank you, Sandy. And I think we're going to start today with the fact that today is Friday, September 11th, and 19 years ago, the United States suffered one of the most severe terrorist attacks that has been experienced around the world. It was a coordinated attack. The terrorists took advantage of our open borders and our relative freedom. They took advantage of the naivete of the people around them who were not smart enough to alert the authorities when some of them went to a flying school and learned how to take off in a plane, but did not learn how to land the plane. And nobody at the flying school thought these guys might be up to no good. We also had a situation where our different intelligence agencies were siloed, and there were indications that something big like this might happen, and yet the agencies did not talk to each other and avoid it happening. I personally was there. I was in Washington, D.C. I was on the west side of the Washington, D.C. area when the plane hit the Pentagon. And of course, it simultaneously, two planes hit the towers. And then you also had a situation where the fourth plane, of course, crashed into a field in Pennsylvania due to the American heroes who were on that plane who rose up and prevented them from crashing. That plane was supposed to crash into the White House, the one that crashed in Pennsylvania. I teach in a university, and what's interesting is many of my students, even the seniors, are not old enough to remember the circumstances surrounding 9/11. And it's a very significant marker for me in my lifetime. It's on a list that there's really only one other item in my lifetime, and that is the assassination of John F. Kennedy in terms of terrorism and fear across the American public. And then probably the only other event in the last 100 years would be Pearl Harbor on September 7th, 1941. So it's an extremely significant event. I'd like to say that I feel the United States has done an exceptional job since then, and I can't say that because they have not. We've been relatively fortunate. There have been a variety of minor terrorist attacks planned that they have detected. All of that is good news. I'm certainly not criticizing. I'm just saying I don't think that we have successfully gotten the message out, but I think we are making some progress, and I'll talk more about that in our main segment this afternoon, talking about Trump and foreign relations. I saw the smoke rise from the Pentagon on 9/11. I was on the west side of the greater DC area on the Beltway, and it took 4 hours to traffic from the west side to the southeast corner of the Beltway, which is where I was living and officing at the time. And it was a very trying 4 hours. What happened is the Washington employers didn't know if there would be other attacks in the greater DC area. They sent everybody home at the same time. Oh, the second thing that happened is, of course, our cell phone system is very dramatically upscaled today, but in the year 2001, it was not on par with what it is today, and the whole cell phone system failed. So I'm sitting in my car for 4 hours, crawling around the loop, seeing the smoke rise because the smoke plume was at least 5 miles high. So even though I was probably 15, 16 miles from the Pentagon, the plume was so large that it was quite plain to see. You knew exactly what had happened. And the radio was working, so you could hear the reporters covering this tragic and horrible event. And so it was really quite something. But then people were worried because I had actually taught in the Pentagon in the year 2000, a year before this terrible incident. I had taught on the opposite side of the Pentagon, so I was not in the area that was hit by the plane. But a number of my friends were panicked to call and to say, are you okay? Were you in the Pentagon when the plane hit? Things like that. And the answer was no, but there was no way to actually communicate with people for a number of hours. One of the sad reminders of 9/11 I heard on the news this morning is a discussion of people who are called the 9/11 survivors. And these were first responders, police, residents of that area, people who worked in those buildings who miraculously survived, because I think there was about roughly 10,000 people in each building. I mean, these are huge buildings, and about 3,000 people died, but that means a lot of people did escape. However, the first responders and the people who were able to escape were exposed to some very bad contaminants, asbestos and other chemicals and things like that. So what happened is a lot of those people have experienced medical issues even today. And of course, there's been some special funding set up to assist those people. But we do need to think about that. And something that was highlighted in the report I heard this morning was that COVID-19 is more likely to be more severe for this 500,000 identified people, because the types of afflictions, COPD, things like that, affect the lungs. COPD is, of course, a lung disease, but COVID-19 tends to really impact. And one of the survivors who was being interviewed this morning said that he was a police person at the time, was directly involved. And he reminds people, while all of these people are streaming out of these failing buildings, they're running the other way. They're running to help the fire department, police department, and medical responders. And of course, many of them died because they were already there when the building collapsed. Both buildings collapsed at some point. And so very sad reminder of the fact that we still, years later, are experiencing the side effects of this terrible terrorist attack.
Wow. So today we honor those who gave their lives, whether on the plane in the field in Pennsylvania, or the first responders that went in, as you were saying, as everyone was rushing out. So we just pay special. And who was the president at that time? It was George W. Bush, right?
Right. And poor George W. Like I said, Bill Clinton was the lucky guy, and he left George W. Bush in a very rough situation. Our security system, our CIA, DIA, those organizations were very demoralized during the Clinton administration. There was not a lot of cooperation. They had been underfunded for a long time. And that doesn't all explain 9/11, but he sure dealt George W. a bad hand. And George W. Did a very good job in the early days of 9/11. He fouled up later, but he actually did a pretty good job with round one. And one of the reasons that I talk so much about having one-term American presidents is that I think somebody like a George W. Bush would have a much higher evaluation if they just got in, did what they can do, and get out. And of course, what we're seeing is with our American presidents with the 4 and 4, which, by the way, is unusual. Many countries have gone to a 5-year one-term or 6-year one-term president, because it is a very demanding job. And what we do is we only have a 6-year president. They're in office for about 3 years, and then they spend their 4th year in office running for office again instead of minding the store. And then in their second 4 years, they are kind of president for about 2 years. And then they spend the last 2 years trying to salvage their legacy. And we, of course, saw this with Barack Obama, where he had so little legacy that he desperately spent his last 2 years looking to create something out of what had been a fairly miserable operation for 8 years. So it's pretty interesting to see how that goes. But yeah, George W. did a pretty good job on 9/11, but then fouled up the response.
Very good. What a great show today, David. This has been very informative. I love that we can take a look and kind of just bring everything back to the facts. It's the facts that count these days, not the rumors, not anything else, just the facts. And I do want to remind everyone that the book, The Decline of America, is available on Amazon. You can get it immediately if you want the Kindle version, or you can have the print version shipped to you. I asked David before we started. We all hear people talking about the other pandemic that was in 1918, around that time, and I asked him who was the president, and it was Woodrow Wilson, who's the first president mentioned in this book. So, if you want to see how another president handled a pandemic, read the part of the chapter on Woodrow Wilson and what he went through and how he handled it. And he did not get a good grade. And I don't know, have you graded Trump yet on his handling of the pandemic?
No, I haven't, and I haven't done it on purpose. And of course, that's become another controversy because of the Bob Woodward book. So maybe we'll talk about that next week.
Okay, sounds great. And also next week, we're going to talk about America and the war on poverty. So, be here, be for sure. One of the things we're considering is doing this on Friday afternoons at 2:00 versus Monday. So if you have opinion on that, we'd love to hear it. Put it in the comments below, please. And we look forward to seeing you again next Friday. So thank you, David. I will see you next week.
Thank you, Sandy. Take care.